Good. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome Keturah to our show. This is Lifestyle with Dr. Moby, and I'm Dr. Moby. Hello, how are you doing?
I am wonderful. Hi, Dr. Moby. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Okay, well, thank you for coming. So, tell us about what you normally do.
Absolutely. So I work as a coach and I work specifically in the area of emotional fluency. And this is something that came out of my work as a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Before I started working for myself, I worked for a company, worked in the field of mental health, and I worked specifically with youth and their families. And one of the things that I found was that the biggest mistake that many parents and children, were making was that in their interaction with one another, there's so much that got lost in translation that created parent-child conflict. And so when I decided to go on my own to approach helping women, I had to narrow it down in a way that could really, really meet their needs. And the three things I found that were really important were identity, worth, and confidence. But even when you started unpeeling those layers,
Mm-hmm.
or peeling those layers, I should say, I found that what made it easiest, the fastest way to get results with families was to really work on some of the underlying issues that if you deal with the emotion and help people with emotional fluency, then it helps to build better relationships, better interactions, etc.
Yeah, that is, I think, really, the area which is need a lot of help. So much stress going on with, now with COVID and so many, everything that people's life have really changed. So tell us also about your journey a little bit. So I know you're very well experienced in that field. So tell us when did you started and how long you've been.
Doing everything. So yeah, I started back in 2017, and ironically, it's interesting that you said, "Tell me about your personal journey," because it also was a personal journey for me too. Of course, on the professional side, I was able to take my skill sets and bring it into the coaching world,
Mhm.
but for me, I went through my own personal journey. Back in 2012, 13, my marriage ended, and I had 4 children from that marriage. And there were a number of factors that contributed to the marriage ending. But in the transition of being a single mother and also somebody who I was still young and I wanted to be married, I wanted to find love again.
Mhm.
But there were a lot of what I would call issues within the tissues, that existed, that I I wouldn't say I suppressed it on purpose. It's just sometimes life happens. You just have to keep moving. And so when my divorce happened, when the separation specifically happened, that's when I started to really dig in and begin to look at some of the areas of my life that I really either wasn't aware needed attention, or just at the time I wasn't even emotionally prepared to deal with. And so um, it became even more apparent to me and more important when I entered into a second marriage, because I did not want to have a repetition of some of the same things that happened. I did not want to end up being where I was 12 years later. So that really was one thing that was an impetus for me to work on myself. And in the process of working on myself, I would see a lot of parallels with myself and with other clients that I was working with when I worked as a therapist. But these are all things that contributed.
I know, and that is, speaks volume that, first of all, I really congratulate that you came out of yourself, believing in yourself, and not only believing in yourself, actually navigating through such a difficult time, emotionally, as well as, a lot of dynamics financially and 10 other things going with it, right? So
Absolutely.
and then not only and also to take care of your kids at the same time, right?
Absolutely.
And then because dealing with stress is one thing, but the reality is actually you have to keep moving forward too, right? You just
Yes,
can't stop your life and then start dealing with the stress, because that is part of reality, but you keep on fighting, and with it, like, still your pace, taking care of your kids and career and everything else has to continue. and
absolutely. Yeah.
and that is people, I think, find it difficult sometimes, is that they find it difficult to work on all these angles, because they are but kudos to you. You're really a very strong person, emotionally and spiritually blessed with that. You not only did that but also continued your journey, and now look at you. You are really helping so many people.
Absolutely. I never would have thought that personal development, coaching, I never would have seen it in the future for myself. And sometimes I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, because when I began sharing with people, like in my personal journey, and that's the thing, it's like two parts. There's the one where I was working with a company for a company and I saw the need. But what really pushed me was not just that, it was as I started going through my own personal transformation and I started seeing different sets of results in my life, people would ask me, like, hey, you're so joyful. What about, your children? How did you go through a divorce and a remarriage, a blended family? Because my husband, his first wife passed away and he has a child from that marriage. So I have 5 children total, with the blend. And,
Mhm.
divorce could be something that it takes a heavy toll on families. And many people saw just how we gelled well together. But not only that, even with my ex-husband, the relationship that everybody has, they just wanted to know. And I started realizing that, you know what? There's something unique, there's something different about the way that I was approaching it. And so I had to start asking myself questions and writing it down and journaling it down so that I could present it to people. And that is really when I said, there is a unique method, and I call it the bold power method. And if you want me to share what that is,
Sure.
definitely. So yeah. I talk about the ideal woman as a momentum woman, and so I say, there are ways to utilize bold power to become a momentum woman. And so it's 5 pillars.
Hmm.
Pillar number 1 is the posture of your heart. Pillar
Hmm.
number 2 is ownership. Pillar number 3 is what I call womb wisdom. Pillar
Hmm.
number 4 is empathy. And number 5 is reverence. So in these areas, that's what I know worked for me. And in presenting it to other people and really helping them adopt this model for building upon their skill set, specifically their emotional, not just emotional intelligence, but emotional fluency. It's really an area I've seen lots of amazing results that I never could have imagined. I was just trying to live and live well.
Wow, wow. I mean, I would congratulate again. This is fantastic. You're just describing, those 5 pillars you came up with. So let's dig a little bit deeper into each, and so for audience sake, so they kind of get benefit out of that. So tell me a little bit about when you say, that first pillar is your heart, right?
Yeah. I know we probably don't have enough time to go through all of them, but emotional fluency for me is the awareness that of the role that our perception plays in our understanding of things, our understanding of our strengths, our limitations, our experiences, um,
Mm-hmm.
and shaping our internal and external environment. And, you know, life happens to us. It just comes at you.
Mhm.
Whether it's you go through something tragic, or you had to move from a place, and just different events that could happen in our lives. But specifically in the area of personal relationships and interpersonal relationships, the posture of the heart. Why I emphasize the posture of the heart is because, you know, out of the heart flows the issues of all of our lives. You know, whether it's a personal relationship, work relationships. Nowadays, people don't want to just have a job, right? They
Mhm.
want a job that they're passionate about. They want to feel like they're contributing. So everything now is being connected to our heart. And so, with the posture of heart, I talk about three types of relationships that we need to have. The relationship with the person walking ahead of you, which is leadership. Then there's the relationship with the person walking with you, and that's more of a partnership. And then the person walking behind you. And why I frame it that way, I didn't say what that final one is. It's mentorship, because we're also meant to give back, right? If you're emptying your cup out all the time, then you feel worn out. You feel, just depleted, and that can build resentment. It could build bitterness. But when you're pouring out and still at the same time getting, poured into, then you have more of an appreciation for everything around you. But also that partnership aspect of it, it helps. It helps with understanding expectations better. Then,
Mhm.
even in certain relationships, if you know where that person is, if you know, okay, they're walking ahead of me, they're walking with me, they're walking behind me, then sometimes when our expectations are not met in relationships, we get angry, we get upset, we get hurt, we get disappointed. But if you have a clear understanding of what it is that you should be expecting out of that person, then
Mm.
it's easier to navigate through these relationships without your needs not being met, number one, and without your expectations being left unmet as well. And I know there's not enough time to really, really unpack it, but I want them to at least think about, the person walking in front of you, with you, and behind you, because it really, really helps to frame our interaction so much better. And
Mm. And
also, yeah,
no,
boost
no, but feel free to dig deeper, so makes it we can definitely, we'd love to have you back,
yeah, yeah.
because this is such an important topic, and, emotional spirituality and, well-being, that is so needed right now, and every time. But, and we'd love to hear more details, but feel free to dig to your style, whatever we can do for this episode. We still have a little bit time, so we can really go a little bit deeper if you need. But tell us also about, a lot of people first stage they will have in situation, whether it's emotional or other elsewhere, is usually like denial, and then they will say, okay, it can't happen to me, and then also a guilt, some kind of guilt that
Oh, yeah.
maybe.
Oh, yes. I think a lot of people, they live in those two. One of the emotions that I've seen most prevalent in a lot of people is guilt. Whether it's they did not accomplish something, and that is actually something that even for me I dealt with for many, many, many years. I got married very young. I was 19 years old when I got married, and I was in college when I got married. But then I had my first child and my second child and my third child, and they were all back to back. And similar to myself, many people, whether it's something they didn't accomplish, or an opportunity that you feel like you missed out on, or just being a certain place in life that you think you should be by now. You may look at your friends, you may look at your contemporaries and see their accomplishments and feel like, well, I don't meet up to that standard. But I always tell my clients, you are exactly where you need to be right now. And if you're not able to really have joy in the moment, to embrace what is, not just to focus on what isn't, but to embrace and to be grateful for what is, then you're constantly going to be feeling like something is missing.
Mm-hmm.
And how guilt plays into that is when you look at what you have. Like if, for example, I had a client who said to me, Keturah, I should be happier. I have a good husband, I have a beautiful home, I have a great job, I have this, I have that, but I feel so incomplete. And we had to unpack it, and we discovered some of the underlying issues that were there. But the the feeling of unfulfillment,
Mm-hmm.
if it's not properly assessed, then what's on the flip side of it is guilt. Because then you know that, well, it could be worse, it could be this, it could be that. And rather than just being in the moment and being present, then that creates problems for people. And I do have a technique that I share with my clients, and I'll just share it right now. For somebody who may be feeling, whether it's they're feeling guilt, or they're feeling like maybe I'm in denial, or maybe I'm not approaching life the way I should, I call it the 4A shift. And it's: one, you shift your attention; two, you shift your awareness;
Mm-hmm.
three, you shift your application. I'm sorry, you shift your accountability. And number four, you shift your adaptability. And what that ends up doing, like for somebody, if you're thinking, Keturah, I don't remember, I'm not going to remember those 4 A's. It's 4 easy ways to learn it. Ask yourself these 4 questions: what am I doing? What should I be doing? How can I fix it? And what happens if I don't? Because then when you ask yourself what it is that you're doing, you're really being present. You're really,
Yeah.
you really are allowing yourself to be present, and you need to be honest with yourself as well. And
Mm-hmm.
what should I be doing? This is where you're digging into your capabilities, and there's more to this part, but I think somebody listening right now, they could still benefit from it.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to learn more, you can always reach out. But that number two part, shifting your awareness,
Mm-hmm.
identifying your capabilities, identifying where you may think you have limitations, but you actually don't. And many times people actually fight for their limitations. They'll say, oh, that's just how I am. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, but then when you really start asking yourself, what should I be doing? And you really allow your subconscious, you allow your spirit to speak, lead from your heart, not just from your head, but really dig into your heart. You will see that the answers are within you. It may be fear, and fear of what people may think, fear of your own success. Many times people think, oh, I'm afraid of failure. And really, it's that they're afraid of success because they don't know what that looks like. And it creates that turbulence for them, because then, whoa, can I sustain this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you were able to get there, of course you'll be able to sustain it. Number three is shift your accountability. And that accountability actually ties back into what I said earlier about having the 3 people in front, having the 3 people in your life. If you realize that, wait a minute, I don't have many people walking ahead of me. Yes, you may have people you listen to, motivational speakers, people like that. But do you have people in your life that are in that position of leadership? Or are there people that are you accountable to anybody? And the one person that sometimes I find many of my clients are not accountable to is themselves.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Sure. So, and I think, this is everybody can relate to that. And the beauty is that you explained it so well. It's very simple, basically see where you are and, where you want to go and, what are your fears or, where should you be going. And accountability, very well said, you're accountable for yourself, first, and also, if you have other people or you think they are part of, whether they are with you, behind you, or along with you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
those, then, but tell us what can help to feel. Number one, I mean, denial can, as you said, a lot of people can last in that stage for a long time, unfortunately, denial as well as guilt. So, so what can really help to minimize those two stages?
Number one, being in a place of gratitude. I always talk about empathy because, again, many of the clients I've worked with, they come out of situations in life where they are the savior and the martyr for everybody.
Hmm.
Um, but there's that lack of compassion for themselves.
Mhm.
Actually, in my I have a coaching program, a monthly coaching program. It's a group program, and that's one of the things we talked about this month. We talked about self-compassion and courage.
Mm.
And one of the things that came up when we were identifying that self-compassion is, again, back to value. How do we see ourselves? Do we have a level of worth? Do we even have a way, a method, a system to assess our worth? And many times, what I see people doing is they're assessing their worth based on somebody else. And I think it's Tony Robbins who says, we have all of us as human beings, we are valuable, and we know this. You don't need Tony Robbins to tell
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
right? We should know this, but we place a level of value on ourselves that is unfair. And if we were to, from an empathetic space,
Mhm.
talk about this way that we look at ourselves and identify other people, you would see that no, we give value to people.
Mm.
We celebrate people when they do something amazing, when they're successful in a way, shape, or form. We talk about it. And within our culture, sometimes we have a sense of false humility. And that false humility is really pride on the opposite end. Because then, if you think about what pride is, right? Pride is feeling like you are something bigger than what you are.
Mhm.
But then on the other side of it, false humility is not seeing yourself as who you are. And so I think how somebody could remedy guilt and remedy denial is just being honest with ourselves
Mm.
and being compassionate with ourselves as well. Not feeling sorry for ourselves or saying, oh, but really give yourself a break.
Mm.
We're hard on ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah.
And, we're extremely hard on ourselves. And depending on how we're raised, what we value, we can be so much harder on ourselves. But if we were to take a moment, if you just take a moment and say, hey, what have I? Even when you do the what am I doing? You will see that you're doing so much more than you realize, so
Mm.
much more than the average person.
Mm. And that is such a beautiful concept. First is gratitude, like you said. That kind of changes the whole perspective, in my opinion, too. That once you realize, when you wake up and you realize, thank God or thank whatever you believe, is that I'm alive and I can see people walk and come out of the bed
Hmm.
or look outside and enjoy. I think that is marvelous. If you look at now people who are sick and then they are, God forbid, in ICU or somewhere, not feeling well, and or they can move, ask them, or even feel for once that if your arm or any part is not functioning, then you realize that how precious everything is.
Yeah.
So
I
that
mean,
changes.
I'm sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
Now, I was just going to share something else that, I think could help them as well, too. And just having vision, it really, really changes things, because we can allow ourselves to be blindsided by so much. And the way we defend it is through being in denial. I see denial as simply a defense mechanism.
Mm.
You know, it's just a defense mechanism that people use to not have to show up more for themselves, to not have to show up at the highest level. But if we were to have a clear vision, of what we want, and not just being outcome driven so much, but how do I want to feel? How do I want to experience life? Not just what do I want to accomplish,
Mm.
but the intangibles of life, especially when we look into those things.
Mm.
If we break it down from that, and allow ourselves to dig into insight driven inspiration, not just, okay, I want to do this or I want to do that, but insight driven,
Mm.
where it's not just about the thing anymore,
Mm.
but about a state of being, that changes things. Because if you want that, if you my husband always says this: a person who is seeking truth it's never going to not find it. If what you're seeking is truth, you will find it. And sometimes we seek answers and we seek things that'll pacify us. But if it's truth that we're after, we will not stay in denial,
Mm. Mm.
and be open to truth.
No, that is true. Probably denial is the first mechanism anybody has, and then so usually, we tell people just to, move on from that to, and the guilt, because first of all, nobody deserves to feel that way, and then even if you feel, we have to acknowledge and move on to the next, and that would be, exactly your forays and pillars. Those are so important. So we have reached to the end of our discussion. So any final thoughts you have for my audience?
Well, my final thoughts for your audience, I would say there are so many things that steal from us. They steal our time, they steal our joy, they steal our energy, they steal so much. But if we are the gatekeeper of our hearts, or the gatekeeper of our lives, then the one thing that we will always do is to safeguard our home. And when I say your home, I'm talking about, your body, your temple. You would safeguard that from any thieves. So I encourage your guests to not allow negative emotions to steal their future and to steal your joy, because there's so much that's available to you. I always say a woman who is grounded, because of my audience, predominantly women, but I say a woman who is grounded and secure in her uncompromised identity, you have the power to turn any crisis into a celebration for good. So,
Wow, wow, wonderful. What a quote. I love it. Okay, so that with that beautiful words, I don't think I have much to add than to say, make sure, people follow you, and tell us also about how they can check your, I know you have a website.
yes, you can find me on my website. It's keturahrosato.com, Keturah
Mhm.
Rosato.com. And I am on social media at the same handle, Keturah Rosato. So if you go to Facebook, you can find me there at Keturah Rosato, and on Instagram as well. Just type in my name as one word on Instagram and you'll find me.
Okay, well, thank you for coming to our show. It was pleasure, and I love to have you back. Actually, so it was such fascinating talk on all that the emotions and spirituality. Take
Yeah.
care, and thank you for watching our show.
Thank you.